Hey, pals! It's time for Retro Trekkers. I'm your old buddy Capt'n John. We're gonna get Commander Joe in here real soon, and let's go.
Retro Trekkers. Get down with the Retro Trekkers. Capt'n John and Cmdr. Retro Trekkers. We love our Star Trek. Retro Trekkers. The nerd muscles get to flex.
Oh, my friend.
Get down with the Retro.
This is gonna be a great episode. It's very funny episode. You know what? I should bring on the man who chose this as this week's episode on Retro Trekkers. That, of course, would be the best damn XO in the fleet. Have you met Commander Joe Townsell?
Well, I have, you have. I hope that's a good experience for you.
Very much so. Very much so.
LLP, everybody, welcome. I do have the distinction of picking this one. I'm sure if I didn't, John would have come up with it as well. But it's just going to be a fun time tonight. We got a good, fun episode, not a heavyweight by any means, but something to be really entertaining and a good time.
We should definitely talk about this episode. Let's see. Oh, right. Okay. We have a segment for this. Here we go. What is the genesis of this episode? Well, so many things, some official, some unofficial. And of course, we'll be talking about that all through the show. But I just want to let you know, this one is from season 6. Am I correct there?
Season 6, indeed, yes.
Season 6. This is the 8th episode. The episode previous to this one, if I'm not wrong, is Rascals, where several members of the crew are changed into children.
I mean, if it's not the transport, it's the holodeck, got to fix this stuff. Come on, Jordy.
But it being the 6th season, I think is significant. Tell me if you agree or disagree, but I think at this point, the show gets a little restless and the actors like to do different things. And people like to change up the same old. And this would be one of those episodes, A Fistful of Datas. Does that sound fair, Mr. Townsend?
I think that sounds fair, Captain. I'll tell you another reason why. Yes, I mean, for a genre show like this, it's, got a lot of high concept ideas going on. People are going to get experimental again, like they were at the very beginning, really.
Yeah.
But they're also wanting to show people, because timing wise, I think we're just prior to DS9, debuting, and they're saying, you know what, our show's still going. We're not going to throw all the eggs in that one basket. We're going to have two strong shows now, which they largely achieved, in my opinion. So yeah, there's definitely a feeling like, okay, let's go balls to the wall, so to speak.
I feel like people kind of forget. Oh, I had no idea that was still on the screen. Sorry. Doing other things. I feel like people sometimes forget that the sort of the magic of having 2 Star Treks going at one time. It's this is syndication. This isn't, they don't work for a network. And we saw with Voyager, with Enterprise, what Star Trek looks like, the more modern Star Trek on a network. But when they're still working directly for Paramount, and Paramount is still raking in piles and piles of money, syndicating this show all over the world at the same time. When you and I saw this episode was also being seen in Canada, and it was being seen in Mexico. It was being seen in England. It was being seen in India. And so the freshness, the money behind it, the decent budgets, they're still there, as you point out. And that is really magical Star Trek. This, you know what? I hadn't thought of it until this very second. This episode, I think, goes and shows you what a great franchise it was, how strong it was, because it looks good. It looks good. It sounds good. There's a lot of great elements to it. A really great cast. That's how I'm feeling about it. How about you?
Oh, total agreement. I mean, TNG was still definitely running strong. We got a little hit and miss in the 7th and final season, maybe.
Right.
A real stinker in that bunch. I mean, I think all the stinkers are at the very beginning of the series. And
well, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just wrapping up by saying that to make this point again, this year of Trek generally with TNG and DS9, I mean, we started what would become 14 seasons of television, 2 of which ran concurrently from now until the end of Voyager.
Wow. That's true. That's
Yeah.
true. Holy cow. Yeah, I mean, it is really a big time in the dynasty of Star Trek. We should get started. Luckily, we've got 2 of my favorite wisecrackers in the world with us.
Oh,
we've
good.
got Ensign Rosario, and we have the Orion pirate Chris Rulbach.
Isn't John looking good tonight, guys? I complimented him before we went on. Looking very stylish and
I think Chris means it as a compliment when he says John actually combed his hair. That's what
absolutely.
I think. That's what I think it is. I've still got it, Chris. Still got it. As Raphael points out, this is an episode he hasn't seen. Well, A, shame on you, sir. B, that's fine, because fortunately we have the beat.
Now, Raphael, you should still check out the actual episode. That's my recommendation. This will give you a take.
Yeah, this is a recap. This is not the full experience, because I have to say I really enjoyed this episode. It was a good one. Let's take a look at the beats from our good friend Commander Joe.
Yeehaw! It's the Retro Trekkers. Return with us to yesteryear. A fiery starship with the speed of warp 10, a cloud of space dust, and a hearty, hi-yo, make it so. Hey, is this the Retro Trekkers or Retro Lone Rangers? Well, one thing's for damn sure, partners. This week we hang out with the next generation for some holodeck hijinks with a fistful of datas.
You got a really good Slim Pickens voice.
Good Ship Enterprise has 2 days of downtime. The crew, weary with non-stop skirmishes with those Ferengis, Cardassians, and other alien polecats, are tasked with killing time. Picard is trying to record a tune with his Resican flute. Crusher is directing a play. Geordi is interfacing the ship's systems through Data's positronic noggin. Worf just wants to have fun and overhaul the ship's defenses. Picard urges Worf to chill out a little bit instead. Besides, we need a plot, and fast. These day-in-the-life episodes are deadly dull. Disappointed that he'll actually have to endure some rest and relaxation, as well as spend time with his son, the morose security chief returns to his quarters. Oh, happy day! Alexander is waiting to rope him into a holodeck adventure in the ancient West. He plops a 10-gallon hat that amazingly fits over Worf's abundant cranium. Worf and Alexander dress up as a Wild West sheriff and his deputy. They step through the holodeck door and arrive in the town of Deadwood, not to be confused with that HBO show of the same name. Their mission, whether or not Worf chooses to accept it, bring the bad guy, Eli Hollander, to justice. Worf promptly kicks Eli's butt, and Alexander stops the program. He is frustrated with his dad like Geordi was with Data when they played Watson and Holmes. That was too easy, Father. It's time to put on your big Klingon panties. Alexander raises the holodeck difficulty level, so it will be a challenge worthy of a warrior. Worf tries again and gets into a brawl with Eli's outlaw cronies. He's rescued by Troy, all decked out in sexy leather and western garb, and speaking in a cool country drawl. The comely counselor is posing as Durango, a delightful drifter, having been recruited by Alexander because she loves western stories. Betazoid babes dig cowboys, especially those with big cranium ridges. Well, anyways, the trio arrests Eli. Meanwhile, in engineering, A power surge in Data's positronic brain causes him and Geordi to discontinue their test. As they walk away, Data twirls his tricorder like a pistol. Nice technique, wrong device. Where's a phaser when you need one? Worf, Troy, and Alexander are holding Eli in the jail. Here come the judge, here come the judge. But wait, dag nabbit, Alexander is kidnapped. Meanwhile, the ship's computer starts getting glitchy. The script for the play that Crusher is directing is replaced with Data's poetic odes to Spot the Cat. The music that Picard was accompanying gets replaced by Anton Dvorak's The Slavonic Dance, which Data's been analyzing. Well, that needs to be corrected ASAFP, because that highfalutin tune has no place in this goofy Wild West story. Also, food replicators produce nothing but Spot's cat food. Feline supplement number 8. Finally, and most alarmingly, Data is really starting to act like a Wild West character. Geordi gets to work repairing the damage. In the holodeck, Eli's father Frank has kidnapped Alexander, but the old man has jaundice or something because his skin and eyes are plum yellow. No, wait, that's not it. Frank looks like Data. He demands the return of his boy Eli in return for Alexander. It turns out that Frank has all of Data's physical abilities, including his corn-pone cowboy accent. Also, turns out that Frank's son, Eli, is now the spitting image of Data also.
What?
A real chip off the old block. As Worf attempts to flee, Frank shoots him. WTF? The holodeck safety parameters have been deactivated. Worf finds Troy. They deduce that they're stuck in the simulation, which can't be turned off until the story ends.
They are.
They'll have to finish the story by somehow defeating an android-powered gunslinger and his trigger-fingered goons. Worf negotiates a hostage exchange with Frank. Troy warns Worf that these outlaws may be without honor. Further alarming is the fact that more and more characters are turning into Datas. A real fistful. Worf recruits the owner of the local saloon, Miss Annie, to bring him some supplies. Annie is programmed to be the Lady of Pleasure.
Ooh.
Thanks for that programming embellishment, Mr. Barclay.
I will have to have a talk
Worf
with
must
Mr.
flirt
Parker.
back in return for the favor. And Worf uses the items to rig a temporary force field, which he wears to the final showdown. It's high noon, and Frank arrives with a full complement of Data look-alike henchmen. They promptly open fire as soon as the hostage exchange is made. The bullets bounce harmlessly off the force field, but it burns out after just a few seconds. The holographic bullets have adapted. Is resemblance futile after all? Troy emerges from her hiding place to hold the outlaw varmints at gunpoint. Well, Frank is out of ammo, but the last of his henchmen tosses him a loaded six-shooter. Worf beats him to the draw and shoots the gun out of his hand. Defeated, Frank gives up. Sheriff Worf tells the outlaws to hit the road and never return to the one-horse town of Deadwood ever again.
Again.
The day is saved. Troy, Worf, and Alexander gather and await the end of the program. But it keeps running. What plot detail has remained unplayed? The trio return to the saloon, where a Data version of Annie runs down the stairs and embraces Worf. She sings a rounding rendition of Mamas, don't let your Klingons grow up to be cowboys.
We get it all this week.
Worf winces as Data Annie rests her head on his chest. Finally, mercifully, the program fades away. The Wild West hell is done. Klingon and android coitus crisis is averted.
Woo!
Back in their quarters, Alexander assumes that Worf won't want to return to the ancient West ever again. But Worf turns out to be a good sport after all. He states that the town of Deadwood might need the protection of good old Sheriff Worf and his deputy Alexander again someday?
You never know.
If so, it will be time to saddle up once again. In a private moment, the security chief admires himself in his cowboy hat, practicing his quick drawl, and smiling like the mischievous warrior that he really is. The Enterprise flies into the sunset with a little harmonica solo thrown in for good measure.
What?
But dag nabbit, the helmsman accidentally hits the accelerator instead of the brake and slingshots the starship around the sun. Well, I'll be a prairie dog in a nest of rattlesnakes. We're in time warp, speeding into the past. Next stop, the real Wild West of the 1800s. Or at least some cheap-looking soundstage version of it. Sheriff Worf, it's time to dust off that 10-gallon hat and shine up that six-shooter.
That's it, right?
That's the beats.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I think I kind of
Oh,
slipped
what did I
in
do?
between
I
like
hit the wrong button. I hit the wrong button. Sorry.
no problem. I think I slipped back and forth between a corn pone cowboy and Ernest T. Bass. So you be the judge of that.
Well, I'm
Oh,
a
big
big
problem.
fan. I'm a big fan of Andy Devine and all them Western fellas who talk like this. So I loved it. But Chris, who sometimes confuses us with the waitress at the lamplighter, doesn't quite think so. Oh, okay, yes, no, he thinks so. Okay.
Oh, you guys are too kind. You're too kind. Thank you very much.
Well, after the beats comes the D&D. Down and dirty.
How dirty it is.
Let's break it down. What do we think of this episode? I have a theory that is not terribly fun. And considering we go for fun here, I don't know if we want to lead with that. What did you think of this show before you saw it again for this, for this recap and review? What did you think going in? What did you think coming out, Mr. Townsell?
Well, I mean, unlike our good friend Admiral Flobo, I mean, I'm a Worf fan. I love the character, and I think it's it's obviously another holodeck mishap episode, but it's a better than average one. I mean, they've all been fun. I personally prefer one that came later on DS9, and John knows this one. Armand Bashir, that was a lot of fun with the James Bond thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you know what? The characters were fun. Everyone had a good time in it. It looked like, and just like I said, it's not saying you don't hold it as a classic in the same regard as some of the real high impact episodes of Trek over the decades, but
Yeah.
a lot of fun and well done. So it delivered in my opinion.
Yeah, I remember at the time being kind of cynical about it, but seeing it again, it was so much like visiting old friends, going back to a comfortable place, going back home as a Star Trek fan. And so let me give you the cynical take, and everybody feel free to tell me if I am being too cynical.
All right,
So here we are. Now, the way TV normally works, and I think that's how it was working in 1992, because that's a lot closer to when I used to work in TV. So I know those rules. When you sign up for a show, you're pretty much theirs for 5 years. You sign a contract that usually it goes about 5 years, and they pick up your option maybe once a year or maybe every 6 months if they're really not sure about your character. And I think this happened to Denise Crosby. You're on a really short contract, and then when they get to the end of it, they do have the choice of cutting you loose, and that's just written into the contract.
Mm-hmm.
So once you survive that 5-year probationary period, then if you are successful, if you are a big part of the show's success, they start giving you things to keep you around and to keep you interested and to keep you doing your best work. I mean, they're winning Emmys at this point, 6 seasons in. This is an enormous cash cow for everybody involved.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the actors are getting things that they asked for. How would that translate into this one? Well, first off, Worf at this time is a super popular character, and I was a big fan as well. I totally know what you're saying, Joe. So you've got the fans, they want to see more Worf. You've definitely got a movement over at the production offices where they want Worf to be a father. We can talk about that later. We can talk about that. But also there's a push to see if maybe Troy and Worf might have a little spark of, romance for each other. And I don't mean to get into Townsel's tidbits territory, but there was in the original script a much bigger push to push the two of them together and, have a little romance going. So there's that. There's also Brent Spiner, who's been playing Data, who is monstrously popular. I've never told you this story, Joe. I was working at the Consumer Electronics Show in 1990, probably 92, now that I think about it.
Mhm.
And it happens, it usually happened like late January, maybe early February, but I think it's usually late January. So we were working on that, and our booth was a big booth. I was working for a company called Computer Associates.
Mhm.
We were across from IBM. We had this big booth, we had a show, and I was an MC, and we did all sorts of interactive stuff. All IBM did was, hey, everybody, here's Brent Spiner, and he's going to sign your autographs.
Okay.
And you weren't paying for those autographs. IBM paid for them. So he sat there for about 2 hours for 2 days and signed I just watched him while I was performing. I could see him signing autographs and, just being very nice to people. Just a very nice fellow.
Oh, awesome.
You always hear good things about Brent Spiner.
Yeah.
So Brent Spiner in this episode gets to play lots and lots of different characters. So that's a fun thing for him. That's a real palate cleanser for him in season 6 to be able to play all these different voices and have that really funny female character at the end. And one more item, one more gift to the cast is Patrick Stewart said that he really wanted to do this episode. And I love the reason he gives, which is that every director feels they have a Western in them.
Oh, yeah. I can see that. I get it. Yeah.
And so it's a lot of service. It's a lot of cast service. And a fan service as well, because it's giving things that the show thinks the fans really want. They want more Worf. They want more Data. They want a relationship. They want to see the fatherhood. Does that sound possible to anybody? Is that crazy? Am I just a loon?
Well, I'm not getting the cynical part of those examples. I think that is a healthy way to look at it, actually. I mean, the actors are challenged and happy. That comes forth in their performance. It makes it fun for us to watch and hear. So
What? No, good point. Good point. I mean,
Yeah.
I think of that in terms of, well, if you're going to give people things that they want, you're going to give your actors things that they want, it should serve the fans. And I agree with you. I think this one does. This is a fun episode. There are a lot of funny stories behind it. So Down and Dirty, I've got to say, and another thing that I'd like to put up, which is something that Joe and I talk about quite a bit, is I think it's a sign of a show that had 25 or 26 or 28 episodes.
26 every year.
What you've got is a big difference in how the episodes go. And as Joe said in the beats, a day in the life, that actually is a kind of episode that they would do on The Next Generation because they had that much time to play with.
Well, I make it as a joke, but
Yeah.
I mean, fortunately, the episodes weren't too frequent because they weren't like edge of your seat excitement.
Right.
But the one I'm thinking of course, was Data's Day, which is largely Data learning more about being human. Yeah, we got the Romulan spy as a B story. That's fine.
Good B
But that's
story.
basically what it was.
Yeah.
And I also think that Patrick Stewart may have enjoyed working on this one quite a bit because, as you say, John, everyone's got a Western in them. I mean, look what it did to me. Here comes my draw. Couldn't help it. But I mean, the first one that Stewart directed was an episode called In Theory, which is kind of like, okay, here's a day in the life of Data. You got a girlfriend. Very nice episode. I enjoyed it a lot, but it wasn't earth-shattering as far as sci-fi concepts, you know?
Yeah, well, there is I mean, I was joking around in it in the promo materials, but I honestly feel like in the early 90s, there was a certain kind of sitcom about parents and their kids. And I think we had that, I think that's what the Alexander really wants to do this, but he knows Worf doesn't like to, try new things and pretend and, do things that are fun. And he's right about all those things. But, for the love of the child, I will try it. Stuff like that. I'll always say that I felt like The Next Generation was a lot of plots written from people going to therapy to deal with how their parents brought them up, because there's so much like, oh, my father and I don't get along. My mother and I don't get along. Like there's so much of that in Next Generation. It's like 30 something kind of is brought in every now and again and made a little part of the show. And then they, let the sci-fi take over again. But hey, yeah, 26 episodes a year, 7 years, you're going to run into those storylines. This, I think, was a nice spoonful of sugar that helps the medicine go down.
Oh yeah, sure, for sure. And as you say, I mean, there were some intended or otherwise. There was a little bit of allusion to like, oh, what about Worf and Troy?
Yeah.
Because at this point in the series and through the end, basically of TNG, Troy and Riker, they were buddies. They were soulmates, but friends on that level. And there's a little bit of stuff going on there. Something I'll steal a tidbit too for this section. But I mean, originally Troy was going to be the saloon girl, Miss Annie.
Right. That's right.
And that would have been interesting to see. I mean, yeah, we of course want to see her in her, in the saloon girl outfit. But more seriously, that would have been fun too. But I think what they did with the Troy character in this was much more interesting and it did a lot more service to that character.
This is a classic example of when a rewrite goes right, because having her serving both as, the mysterious stranger Durango, which is funny because it is such a cliche, but also she's doing some counseling during this adventure. And that's cool too. Like that's her job, bring these two family members together. So yeah, I really liked how that worked out, though I must say, I agree. Marina Sirtis in a saloon girl outfit, I would have liked to have seen that.
I would have liked to have seen it, but we would have lost the Data saloon girl joke at the end, which I think caps it off so brilliantly. And I know one thing, that Durango, when there's mention of a good old steak and some gooseberry pie, she thinks it sounds delicious.
Chris, once again, soliciting for writing work through our show. Good luck, pal. I'm not a writer, I'm a rewriter. Rewriting, that's so funny. I had a great acting teacher, and he sat me down one day and he said, look, your acting is not good enough. It's not up to snuff. It's not enough to be an actor. You have to be a reactor.
Okay.
And so I think that might work a lot with writing as well. Rewriting is a really important job, is it not, Mr. Author, Mr. Joe Townsend?
Oh, of course. I mean, there's usually a long road from first draft to final, and by the time I get to the end and it's done and it's ready to put out there to the world, not a lot is left from what I first started with.
Yeah, I found that myself with a few things that I've written. But it is a journey. It's been a long road.
Oh, every time John gets a stonk you for Faith of the Heart, he is going to take advantage of it, my friends. You can count on that.
All right. Hey, speaking of which, who do you choose as your MVP for this episode? Everybody in the chat, what do you think? Joe Townsend, what do you think? Who gets your MVP award this time?
Well, listen, I have a feeling I know who you're going to pick, so I'm going to try to guess and do somebody else, but got to give it to the Klingons. I'm going to give it to both Worf and Alexander. I mean, the story was about them, really, and about their father-son relationship, how it took a nice positive upswing at the end when, Worf was wanting to do busy work just to get out of this thing. Just please, Picard, give me something, let me do some filing, whatever. And when he had no choice, he did it. And hey, this isn't bad. We'll go again someday, that type of thing. So, got to give it to father and son Klingons.
That is a great call. That's a great call. Absolutely. I could go. I could go obvious, and I could say Brent Spiner. He really did that. Brent Spiner is not just a character actor, but he's a comic character actor. That's why he recurred so much, or his character recurred so much on Night Court.
Yes.
He can.
That's when I first noticed him.
Yeah, he can do the very funny voices. He can do the very funny characters. And I like what he was doing because it was kind of ridiculous, but that's okay. It's a hologram. Everything can be kind of ridiculous. It can be kind of big. Although, half my brain wants to go, give it to Patrick Stewart, because this to me did not look like a typical Star Trek episode. I love that. He really embraced what he was given. Did we see any horses in this episode?
I don't believe so. It wasn't even a one horse town. It was a no horse town.
The 0 horse town. And because they weren't budgeted for horses, it was too expensive to have horses, I think.
Well, they had one day to film the location shooting on the Western set, Universal, I believe, the Western set there. One day.
Yeah.
They'd get it all done,
Yes, absolutely. Oh, Chris, that's a very cool piece. Yeah, I imagine this is true. When Brent left Night Court to take a regular job doing The Next Generation, the actress he worked with was very upset. Yeah,
that was a good comedy duo for that show. And I could be wrong. This guy, I don't watch the show really, but I think I read somewhere that he did make one guest appearance on the current incantation of Night Court.
Well, that makes sense too, because you basically got all the guys out there taking a guest spot here and there.
Oh, sure.
Oh, yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, Chris, you're absolutely right. Horses and wranglers cost money. They do. They cost a ton of money.
That's why they made this episode, because Brent Spiner played all the cowboys and villains and outlaws. So they saved a lot of money.
They saved a ton of money. Oh, so yeah. As far as MVPs go, there we go. Now here's the fun part of this.
Good old tidbit.
Joe Townsend, please regale us with tidbits of trivia and insider information that we may not have already known.
Well, I'll do my best, sir. My favorite this week is the fact that at one earlier draft, this episode is called The Good, the Bad, and the Klingon.
Oh, that's not a bad title.
It's not a bad title, although it kind of infers that Worf is ugly. Yeah.
Oh. Well,
and as I said, there were 2 Klingons, not just one.
Right. But they're definitely going for a spaghetti Western title, because both of them ended up being, a spin on a well-known spaghetti Western.
Well, plus, and Brent Spiner, of course, portrayed. I can't remember the director's name of the spaghetti westerns, but anyway, he
Sergio Leone.
Look, I'm sorry, John. Who was it?
Sergio Leone.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, he took on the look of good old the man with no name for several of the characters in the episode. So it all makes sense. Absolutely.
Yeah. Actually, the costumes look more spaghetti Western than they do Ponderosa.
Oh yeah, that's mainly with the 3 protagonists for that story.
Yeah,
meaning Alexander, Worf, and Troy. They're more what we expect from like Gunsmoke.
Right.
Which I didn't get to. I didn't squeeze that in there. Darn it. Maybe next time.
You know, you did a beautiful job, and frankly, you being Princess Grace in High Noon. Mwah!
Oh, wasn't she gorgeous? I gotta tell you. My only regret of it, and I don't want to go too much in self-serving here, but the one thing I really wanted to do in those beats, but I couldn't manage it because there was just no graphics I could find. I wanted so badly when I showed the bar brawl to use the pie fight scene from Blazing Saddles, but there's amazingly there's no images to be found that could work.
That's insane. My God, I believe you. I totally believe you because
Well,
I've
not that I
run
could
into
find anyway.
dead ends myself. But I mean, it's like there's no photos of that. Holy cow!
I found it interesting that this episode bears a resemblance to a show I liked for as little as it was on, the Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
Oh, I love the
Yeah.
Adventures of Briscoe County Jr. Oh, it was on Fox. It was on Friday nights, I think, before X-Files. That's a great show.
I mean, just the lightheartedness and the fun Western romp aspect of it was great.
Yeah.
And of course, what made that comparison even better to me was just Worf's reluctant hero, which of course he embraced later.
I really dig the fact that they used you know, I don't know if this is the same old Western town that they always had out here in Southern California. It was called The Ranch, and they used to shoot Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, and like a million shows before that.
Sure.
I don't know if that's where this town came from, but this was an old Western town that Hollywood used to use.
This is the first appearance of Worf's weirdly weird chair that had all the balls on it.
Oh my God. Okay, I have to stop things for a second here.
Sure.
Raphael says even The Prisoner did a Western episode. I don't remember that. Is that true?
I gotta say, I mean, doesn't mean it didn't happen. We of course can always count on good old Rolf, but I don't remember it either. And the whole series was 16 episodes, wasn't it?
Yes,
Prisoner.
it was a very limited number of episodes. English TV, you know, they don't commit. No, Chris is right. Yeah, it's in Santa Clarita. I forgot about that. The Ranch. I know CBS used to shoot there a lot, but you know, you could just rent it. Paramount didn't have any of their own, so I think they had to use that. Let's see. I'd like to talk about the actor who plays Alexander.
Brian Bonsall.
Brian Bonsall. Now, Brian Bonsall first became known to everyone because he played Andy on The Facts of Life, right? No, what's that?
No, in Family Ties.
Family Ties. Thank
With Michael J. Fox.
Right. So
he was the fast-growing baby, like they all are.
he was the super fast-growing baby, which he also did in this show. There had been another Alexander. Another little actor playing Alexander, but he was a toddler. All right. Well, this is Brian. I believe this is during one of his court appearances.
Oh no.
Yeah, because Brian had some issues.
He became Eli.
But the interesting thing about Brian is he became a full-time musician. He played with a bunch of bands, and he toured with the band The Ataris.
Okay, well, that's interesting.
That's not nothing.
Yeah.
And apparently his as he tells it, and again, this is how it's written in, you know, on the internet. They're saying he claims to have been sober since 2010, which is the time of his most recent arrest. So hey, God bless you. I hope, Brian, you're still sober and you're still happy. It's a good thing for everybody.
Of course.
Hey, speaking of
Tubi.
Prisoner episode 14, Living in Harmony. It's on Tubi. Thank you, Rolf.
Well, we'll check it out. Maybe I could use one of the stills from that.
Fantastic. What other tidbits do you have, Mr. Townsend?
Oh, a couple of BTS items. I guess Marina Sirtis was trying to master smoke rings when she smoked at the beginning of her, her appearance. And I guess Mike Rowan says, "Hey, don't be funnier than me. This is my episode." So then she just chose to blow smoke in his face instead. So good for her.
Which I love that little scene. It's so funny. I did read that tidbit as I was going through the material, and then I watched the episode, and there is like a reaction moment where she blows smoke into his face, and that is a riot. I think that's one of the things that really works about this episode is the comfort that the actors have with each other. And I think we could say that the comfort also extends to the director, Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
There they are. They're so relaxed with each other. It's like when people are doing an episode with Frakes, even nowadays. This guy knows how to let the actors have fun and incorporate it when they can. And that's just genius. That's just good directing right there.
Well, it's obviously motivating. I mean, you hear stories about how badly received the director of Nemesis was after having 2 films with Frakes directing.
Right.
And I think it does show on screen. It absolutely does.
Oh, it definitely does. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, because Frakes movies, I think of those as being not his greatest work.
Like First Contact.
Yeah.
Insurrection was just a poor story. Then he did the best he could with it. But
right.
I think First Contact's right up there with his work. But you're right; he's done a ton of stuff.
Here's what I would always say: the scene where the Borg take over the Enterprise is shot so much like a music video. There's so much like it's like, look at what I'm doing with the laser light, like walking through the halls, close up, walking through the halls, close up. Like there's some weird stuff. Now, granted, you could just say, "Hey, John, that's the editor," and that's true. That's true. But
well, there is a possible explanation for some of that anyway, because I know one scene you're referring to where one scene is a cutaway, and it's like just a number of Borg coming out of the darkness with their little beams. And that was actually filmed separately I don't know what they thought they needed to, but they said they needed some kind of a segue there and to make it was just a little bit short. That part of the movie was a little bit too quick. They needed a little bit of a menacing interlude. So maybe that's some of that's giving you that impression, I would think.
You know what? I get really easily triggered by that because having watched Rocky IV, directed by Sylvester Stallone, whole lot of music video cuts in there.
So, I mean, you and I are on the same page there, my friend, because a lot of people think, and not to get too far off the topic, but a lot of people think that Rocky V, including Stallone, is the worst. I'm sorry, Rocky IV is the worst.
It was not well done.
No.
And I think we give it a pass because Draco's a great character and, everything moved it forward. Anyway, now here we are talking about Rocky.
Well, maybe a retro Rangers type discussion in the future. We can come back to Rocky, but
absolutely.
One more little tidbit for me to kind of end on. Patrick Stewart, of course, as the director of the episode, was looking for inspiration. Blink and you'll miss it scene is when Alexander's laying on his stomach underneath the saloon doors.
Oh, yeah.
And that's pretty much lifted from Shane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And Shane is a great Western. That is a really great one. I mean, the Westerns you referenced were great ones too. But yeah, there is like the little kid hiding while all the violence is happening. You're seeing it through the facial expression as much as Brian is able to do. I just have to throw this on, and I hate myself for doing this because I try not to criticize actors too much, but it was so I think one of the reasons why people give such a bad time to the character of Alexander, to the relationship of Worf and Alexander, I hate to say it, but I honestly feel like it was because Brian Bonsall did not want to be there. He's a child. He doesn't want to memorize lines. There are scenes in this episode where I swear I can see him reading. Like somebody's holding up a card and he's just reading off it.
Well, you'd have a great eye for that, so I don't doubt your impression. I don't remember thinking that, but I was probably just too engrossed in the episode overall anyway. And obviously, his part in any story he's in is not going to be very vital.
I mean, yeah, you don't want to put too much on a kid's shoulders anyway. I mean, there are certain child actors that they would do that for, but Brian Bonsall was never one of those. And he did have, he had like Hollywood movies. He had like theatrical releases. He had made for TV movies. He was in series. But as we learned from Armin Shimmerman, we just recently talked about this, and I think it was Armin Shimmerman talking to the woman playing his Klingon bride in the House of Quark. And he says, look, when you have to wear all this makeup, you get wiped out during the day. You get exhausted, and you have to keep working. And with all of that, like literally weighing you down, it is a much harder job than it already is. And having all the cameras on you and having everybody's like ability to pay their rent or to pay their insurance or, all of that's on you. Like people don't realize that being an actor is a huge high pressure job. If you screw up, you're hurting many, many people. If for no other reason, then now they'll get home later because you can't get the lines right. So it is a tough damn job. And so I give it to Brian Bonsall on that. But I honestly feel like the show put a lot on him and he did not bear it gladly. And that, I think, might be one of the minuses when it comes to Alexander. How about you? How do you sum up that father-son relationship, Joe?
Well, I tend to agree on most points. I mean, especially if you consider that from the time that he started using this actor, Brian Bonsall, through the end of TNG, which is, we never saw him after that.
Yeah.
He got better. I mean, he was a little bit more likable in the sense like we didn't feel like we were watching a wooden performance, that type of deal.
Yeah.
But I think it was pretty obvious when they wanted to bring the character back for DS9, they were going to give him another aging surge and get another actor that had some chops.
A kid who really wanted the job.
It just amazed me how quickly Klingons age until they're adults, and then they live forever.
They live forever. Yeah. It's they say that dogs age like that too. It's like it's not literally 7 years per year, that like young dogs age very quickly and then older dogs sort of slow down a bit anyway.
No, I've read that too. They age in surges. And as a matter of fact, our good friend Tony Luna sent me a text earlier because he's knocking on the door of the 6-0. And
I knock on that door too, but I knock it from.
You knock it back here.
Knock it back. That's right.
But he sent a little article to me that enjoyed it where he says, "Yeah, men tend to get surges at 44 and 60." So basically, John, we've already fallen apart, but Tony can look forward to it still.
Something to look forward to. Hey, man, whatever gets you through the night.
Of course.
Honestly, my brain doesn't think I'm a day over 25, and that's how I work. Let's talk about next week, an episode I've never seen.
And thoroughly enjoyed watching. Yeah.
Dude,
it's at first glance, you might think it's a mirror universe episode. It is not. There's a clue in the title here: Take a Course in Revisionist History 101.
Oh, wow.
And there's a possible, I'll save this for next time. There's a possible connection between this episode and the upcoming Starfleet Academy series.
Hey, look at us helping people, giving you a little something you might get a connection to.
Well, again, it's a theory I share with a lot of people currently, but it would make a lot of sense, and we'll explain why next week.
Cool. All right. Well, I'm not going to give away anything that I possibly know. I don't know a thing. I don't know anything. Oh, I know this. Thursday night, I will be playing on Mr. Weber's Web of Mystery. I will be playing a Sherlock Holmes episode. This is Basil Rathbone's final episode. It started a whole series of events, and we will cover them on Web of Mystery because once Basil Rathbone quits the Sherlock Holmes show, and he is replaced, oh boy, everything goes to hell in a handbasket. and it is a long story. So basically, I'm going to take a month worth of shows to tell it to you. But in the meantime, you're going to get all these great shows. I'll just tell you right off the bat. We're going to have shows that feature George Sanders. We're going to have a show. We're going to listen to The Saint with Vincent Price. There are a bunch of great shows coming up, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So join me on Thursday, this coming, and all the Thursdays thereafter. And if you haven't had enough sexy Joe Townsend in your life, and who does?
Who? Not me. I'm still looking for it.
Let's remind you once again that we are going to do the season finale, the 50th episode. Oh my God, of Retro Rangers. Who knew? You know, this is actually very true. Basil Rathbone was one of the finest fencers in all of show business. And he did often teach other actors. Yes, I'm going to be giving you a lot of information about Basil Rathbone. He was a fascinating guy. Absolutely fascinating. So, yes, join us on Sunday. That will be our season finale for season 2. And then Sundays are going to be Catch as Catch Can, fun-filled romp of programming. We will continue to put things in that time slot.
Yeah, we're not going dark on Sundays, everybody. We're going to continue until we come back with season 3 of Rangers. But lots of great stuff on the Sundays in between.
Absolutely. And Ensign Rosario is right. You can catch Retro Rangers on its own YouTube channel, Retro Rangers HQ, as opposed to the channel that you are watching right now, Weber Internet Thingy. That might be it. Have we covered almost everything, Commander?
I think we covered everything for now. Again, some big announcements next week, I think, on how we're going to entertain you on Sundays for a while. You saw everything else, so yeah, keep tuning in.
Keep tuning in.
And subscribe and get notified and like all that stuff.
Oh yeah. I never remember to put that banner up. Do I have it? Well, I can use this one. Hey, there we go. Thank you for watching Retro Trekkers on Weber Internet Thingy. If you're watching us on Instagram, thank you for watching on Instagram. We are about to get out of here, so thank you, Rafael Rosario. So wonderful to have
Thank you, Chris, and anyone else who popped by possibly. And
Chris, we finally got your living witless joke in. That's great too. And Commander Joe Townsend, thank you, sir, for being such an amazing force behind getting this show on the air.
Oh, many thanks to you, Captain. It was my pleasure, and many more to come.
LLAP, everybody. And
Hobo
Indy
Desert.
is
Retro
well.
Trackers. Retro
Bye, everybody.
Trackers.